Have you ever heard of a child saying, with absolute certainty, that their mother lives in the woods, and means it literally? What would you do if the babysitting job you took for a little extra cash led you to a cabin with no neighbors? No streetlights, and no sound, except the wind shifting through trees that seem to breathe at night? And what if that wasn't even the strangest part? Every year, thousands of posts flood Reddit under tags like no sleep and let's not meet. Filled with stories people swear are true. Many are brushed off as creepy fiction. But some stay with you. Not because they were written well, but because they feel wrong in a way you can't explain. In tonight's video, we're going to unravel two of the most unsettling stories I've ever found. One about a boy whose mother might not be human, and another about a wife who stopped blinking and started watching. These aren't just stories, they're puzzles. Each moment builds towards something darker than the last. So sit back, keep the lights on, and watch until the end, because every detail will make you question what's real and what's already in your house. It started with a Craigslist ad. I'd already been babysitting all summer, mostly for families I knew or neighbors who needed an extra hand, but this one was different. They offered above average pay, lived about 25 minutes outside of town, and wanted someone comfortable with rural properties. That should have been my first clue. When I arrived, I realized the house wasn't just rural, it was isolated. A cabin nestled at the edge of a forest, with no neighbors in sight, no cell service, and the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. It looked peaceful from the outside, a neat little porch, flower beds lined with stone, wind chimes swaying gently in the breeze. But something felt off. Not haunted house off, just too quiet, too still. The inside was just as picturesque. Homey. A fireplace that hadn't been used in years. A staircase that creaked in the exact way you'd expect. Cute little quotes on the walls like, "Home is where the heart is," and, "In this house we say sorry." It all felt like it was trying too hard to say, "We're normal." That was my second clue. The kid I was watching, Jason, was polite. Quiet, maybe 5 or 6 years old. He wasn't the type to throw tantrums or talk my ear off. Honestly, he didn't really talk much at all. He just stared, especially when we were outside. Especially at the woods. After putting Jason to bed that first night, I did what I probably shouldn't have done. I snooped. It's not something I'm proud of. But if you've ever babysat in a stranger's house, you've probably done it too. I wasn't looking for anything bad. Just curious. That's when I found the horse. It was a small porcelain statue, tucked into a drawer in the master bedroom. Dusty. Fragile. Something about it felt strange. Like it had been watched more than it had watched others. I turned it in my hands, watching the moonlight catch the glaze. And then the light disappeared. No flicker. No cloud passing overhead. Just darkness and a shadow. Massive and motionless, stretching across the floor. It swallowed the light like a thick fog. I didn't move. I couldn't. It felt like something was standing behind me, watching me, and waiting. But when I finally looked, nothing. Just the night. Just the forest. The horse was bathed in moonlight again. I slipped it into my pocket. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted a souvenir. Maybe I wanted proof. Later, I learned that shadow wasn't my imagination. 2 weeks after that night, police would pull motion-triggered security footage from a hunting cam nearby. The timestamp matched. A figure, human-shaped but wrong, crawled through the garden and stood perfectly still at the living room window. No footsteps in the mulch. No movement in the surrounding bushes. Just stillness, as if it knew where every blind spot was, and chose not to hide. Back in the house, I remember retreating to the couch, turning on cartoons to distract myself. But I couldn't stop glancing at the windows. There's a reason I'm telling you all this. And it's not just to scare you. It's because the next night changed everything. Because that's when Jason looked me straight in the eye and said, "My mom lives in the woods." And I realized I wasn't babysitting a kid with a scary imagination. I was babysitting someone who'd already met whatever was out there. And that's where we go next, into the attic, where Jason waited in the dark, and the window faced the trees. I woke up to silence. Not the kind that's peaceful, but the kind that makes your skin tighten. Jason's door was open. It was sometime after midnight, and the whole house felt colder than it had earlier. I remember my breath fogging up slightly as I climbed the stairs, calling his name in a whisper that sounded way too loud in that narrow hallway. "Jason?" No response. I peeked into both bedrooms. Empty. That's when I saw the attic door open. Now, let me be clear. The attic was always locked. It had one of those pull-down ladders and a sliding bolt from the outside. When I'd asked about it the first day, the dad joked, "Old storage and raccoons. We don't go up there." But that night, the door was unlatched, and the ladder was down. I should have called someone. I should have grabbed Jason and run. But instead, I did what most people do in horror stories. I climbed up. The attic smelled like dust and wood rot, the kind of scent that settles in your clothes. I saw Jason sitting by the tiny circular window, knees pulled to his chest, staring out at the forest like he'd been waiting. He didn't turn around when I called his name. "What are you doing up here?" I asked gently. "Your parents will be home soon. You should be in bed." Still nothing. I sat beside him. The window was old, glass smudged, but you could still see the backyard and the edge of the forest line. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary, trees swaying, grass moving in waves, but Jason never blinked. His eyes were locked, focused. I followed his gaze, and that's when I noticed it. Not at first, but the longer I stared, the more I felt it. Something was out there, hidden in the trees. I couldn't see it directly, but the shadows weren't moving naturally. They swayed too slowly. They leaned toward the house instead of away from it. It felt like the trees were breathing, watching us back, so I tried to lighten the mood. "What do you think lives out there?" I asked. Jason didn't hesitate. "My mom." I'll never forget how he said it. Calm, flat, like he was stating a fact. "Like the sky is blue. Or fire is hot." I chuckled nervously. "She's at dinner with your dad. Remember?" "No," he said. "That's not my real mom." I didn't know what to say. I thought maybe he was playing. Or being dark, like some kids do when they want attention. But then he added, "She waits until it's dark. She hides. She watches. And if you see her, you can't unsee her." That sentence haunted me, not because of what it said, but because of the way he said it, like he'd heard it before. Like it had been whispered to him. I stayed with him a while longer, just sitting in the cold attic, listening to the floorboards creak below us every now and then. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe not. Later, when I mentioned the attic to the family, they denied ever going up there. Said it had been bolted shut since they moved in. But when they checked it themselves the next morning, the lock was missing, and in its place was a single muddy handprint on the wall beside the window. Too big to be Jason's. Too small to be his dad's. Here's the part that still gives me chills. When I saw the security footage from that night, the same one with the shadow outside the window, there's a moment. Just a flash, where a face appears in the attic glass. Pale, featureless, and watching. It was behind us. Jason didn't want to look at it. That's why he kept his eyes forward. That's why he never turned around. And that night, neither did I. But the next time, I wouldn't be so lucky. Because the thing in the forest? It doesn't just watch. It comes inside. And that brings us to what happened the next night, when it started counting. The next night was the last time I ever babysat at that house. I wish I could say I left because I was being rational, that the attic. The shadow, the way Jason spoke with that flat, unnatural calm had finally convinced me something was wrong. But the truth is, I stayed. I needed the money. I needed the answers. And some part of me wanted to believe I'd imagined it all. That night started quietly. Jason was extra silent during dinner, barely eating, and didn't respond much when I asked how school was or what he wanted to watch on TV. He just kept glancing at the back window, the one that looked out into the woods. After he went to bed, I stayed on the couch watching reruns, checking the clock, waiting for the parents to come home. Every creak made me jump, the kind of paranoia you feel when your gut already knows what's coming. Sometime around 1 a.m., I heard it, creaking, floorboards, upstairs. It wasn't the usual kind, no wind, no pipes, no settling. It was measured, steady, like someone was pacing. I called out, hoping Jason had just gotten up to use the bathroom. No answer. I forced myself to go up. Slowly, one step at a time. Jason's door was closed. The parents' door was open. At first, I thought maybe they'd come home early and I just hadn't noticed, but there were no cars outside. No jackets by the door. I stepped inside, whispering, "Hello?" And that's when I saw the statue again. The little porcelain horse I'd pocketed the first night and then secretly placed back out of guilt. But this time, it was shattered. Not dropped, not cracked. Smashed. Pieces arranged on the floor in a circle. At the center, a line of small, black pebbles, or what I thought were pebbles until I picked one up and realized it was soft. Damp, like dried out flesh. I dropped it. My body locked up. Something was standing outside the bedroom window. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Its shadow stretched across the room, long and crooked. The window pane was fogged with condensation, and the shape on the other side wasn't moving, just standing there. Tall, bent, like its spine had too many joints. And then, it raised a finger. Slow, deliberate. It touched the glass and began counting. 1 tap, 2, 3, each one louder than the last. Each one more frantic. I stumbled back, knocked over the dresser, and ran downstairs. I didn't even care about Jason in that moment, just survival. Pure panic. But when I reached the bottom of the stairs, he was already there, standing silently in the hallway. "Did you see her?" he asked. I froze. "Who?" Jason looked up at me with those wide, glassy eyes. "The one who counts." I didn't know what to say. I grabbed his hand, yanked open the front door, and practically dragged him onto the porch. I didn't stop to grab my bag or my phone. I just wanted out. But before I could move, Jason looked back toward the window and said something I still don't fully understand. "She only counts when there's someone new in the house." We ran. I don't remember how we got to the neighbor's place, miles down the road. I just know a truck eventually picked us up after someone called the police. Jason's parents arrived shortly after, confused and shaken. But here's the part no one could explain. There were no footprints outside the bedroom window. No fingerprints on the glass. And the only thing left behind in that room, aside from the shattered horse, was a long scratch mark across the wall, like someone had dragged a nail slowly across the dry wall. From the ceiling, to the floor. Later, when police reviewed trail cam footage again, they caught the same figure. Same crooked back, same long limbs, but this time, it was closer, leaning against the wall of the house. Still, silent, watching. And the audio they pulled from my phone's voice memos, unintentionally left recording, picked up something none of us could explain. 7 taps, then whispering, then silence. I didn't go back to that house. I didn't speak to the family again. Jason eventually moved away, but that memory? It's never left me. And that's why the next story hit me harder than I expected, because when I read about the wife who wouldn't stop watching, something clicked. This isn't about one haunted house. It's about being watched by something that doesn't blink. And maybe, never leaves. I used to joke that my wife Lynn didn't have a playful bone in her body. She hated horror movies, never played pranks, and if I ever tried to sneak up on her, she'd swat me with a dish towel and call me a child. That's why, when she first peeked at me from behind the hallway corner one morning, I actually smiled. It was weird, sure, but it felt like maybe she was finally loosening up. "Geez, Lynn," I laughed, clutching my coffee. "You scared the hell out of me." She didn't say anything, just giggled and darted into the living room like a kid caught misbehaving. I chalked it up to a rare burst of silliness and didn't think much of it. In hindsight, I should have, because that was the first time. And it never stopped. The second time, it was around 2 a.m. I'd gone downstairs for a drink. As I stood at the kitchen island, sipping orange juice from the jug like a sleep-deprived zombie, I felt it, that awful, instinctive tingle on the back of my neck. I looked down. Lynn was on all fours, peeking at me from behind the island, grinning, wide, unblinking. Her hair hung like a curtain, and her mouth was stretched into a smile too wide for comfort. It didn't look playful anymore, it looked hungry. I dropped the jug. It shattered. She didn't flinch. Instead, she crawled backward, hands and feet smacking the floor, and disappeared into the dark hallway. That time, I didn't laugh. When I confronted her the next morning, she acted like nothing happened. She smiled, said I must have been dreaming, and offered me coffee like it was any other day. But I know what I saw. I remember the way her fingers curled against the tile, the way her eyes never blinked. Over the next few weeks, it escalated. Sometimes I'd come home and find her peeking from behind the couch cushions. Once, she squeezed into her grandmother's old trunk at the foot of our bed, leaving it slightly cracked just enough for one eye to show. Another time, I found her curled under the dining table, eyes wide, face upside down, that same impossible smile glued to her lips. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't tell friends. What would I even say? My wife keeps hiding in our house and grinning like a lunatic. It sounds like a joke. But it wasn't. I started recording her. It felt awful. Like a betrayal. But I needed proof I wasn't losing my mind. And on one of those nights, when I pretended to sleep, I captured it. Footage of Lynn standing in our doorway at 3:14 a.m. Not moving for nearly 20 minutes. No shifting. No blinking. Just standing. And smiling. When I showed it to her the next day, she laughed like it was a prank I'd staged. "You really edited this? That's so creepy," she said. But I hadn't touched the footage. What really got to me wasn't the smile, it was her lack of reaction. She didn't even flinch when she saw herself. It was like she already knew what was on the screen. At this point, I started noticing other things. The way our family photos had changed. In some of them, Lynn's eyes didn't quite match, like they'd been caught mid-blink. Except, they weren't. They were just off. A bit too glossy. A bit too empty. One night, I woke up to find her standing over me. Just inches from my face. Her mouth was closed this time. But her eyes, those same glassy, moonlit eyes, were wide open. Staring. I screamed. She didn't move. Just whispered, "You looked peaceful." We started sleeping in separate rooms after that. I told myself it was temporary. That maybe she was going through something. But inside, I was terrified. Not just of her, but of what she was becoming. I tried calling her mother. She brushed me off. I asked about any family history, dementia, sleep disorders, anything. But all she said was, "Lynn was always different," and then hung up. Then one morning, I found a trail of red along the carpet, thin, deliberate smears leading from the hallway closet to the back door. They stopped just before the doorframe. And on the knob, a single bloody fingerprint. I asked Lynn about it. She smiled. "I was just dreaming," she said. "But dreams don't leave blood trails." And when I installed a motion sensor cam by the closet, just to be sure, I caught her again. This time, it wasn't just peeking. It was crawling out, slow, shaking, with her face contorted in glee, dragging something small and furry behind her. The camera footage glitched 5 seconds later. The timestamp vanished, and the next time I opened that closet, nothing was there. I don't know what she is now. But she's not just watching anymore. She's waiting. And what happened next? The way I found her in the shower. The glass, the screaming, wasn't a prank. It was the beginning of the end. And that's what we'll get to in the next part, when the peeking stopped, because she didn't need to hide anymore. I don't remember the drive to my brother's house. I was barefoot, in my boxers, soaked from the shower, still bleeding from the scratch Lynn left on my shoulder. The car was on autopilot, just me, the dark highway, and the image of her face pressed against the curtain burned into my brain. She hadn't screamed, she hadn't chased me, she just stood there with that smile. I stayed with my brother Chris and his wife for 2 nights. I barely slept. The first night, I locked the bedroom door and shoved a chair beneath the handle like I was in a horror movie. The second night, I turned off my phone. I didn't want to read her messages. I didn't want to know what she'd say. But the silence didn't make it better. Because that morning, my sister-in-law casually said, "Oh, Lynn stopped by yesterday while you were sleeping. She didn't want me to wake you." I froze. She was here? Yeah, she looked exhausted. Poor thing. She didn't say much, just stood outside the door for a while. There were no footprints outside the guest room window. No camera footage, but 2 faint streaks of moisture were left on the glass. Long, vertical marks, like someone had been breathing on it. Watching. That's when I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. Chris agreed to go back to the house with me the next day. We pulled into the driveway mid-morning. No sign of her car. The front door was unlocked. The curtains were all drawn tight. And the air inside smelled like rot, wet, sour, thick. We checked the rooms together. Kitchen, living room, hallway, empty. When we reached the bedroom, I knew something was wrong. The closet door was open. Inside wasn't clothing or boxes like you'd expect. Just rows of eyes. I'm not exaggerating. I counted at least a dozen pairs, lined up on a folded towel like they were being sorted. Some large like human eyes. Some small, maybe a rabbit? A cat? Each was dried out, shriveled, but still whole. I stumbled back and nearly vomited. Chris turned pale and muttered something like, "Jesus Christ, Becca's shoe addiction doesn't look so bad anymore." We didn't stay in that room. But I needed answers, so I checked under the bed. And that's when I saw her. Lynn, curled in a fetal position, hands under her chin, shaking with excitement, like a child on Christmas morning. Her face was smeared with something, dark and sticky, and her eyes were stretched so wide I thought the skin might tear. She didn't blink, just stared, and made this hiccuping noise, almost like she was delighted. "Lynn," I whispered, "what are you doing?" No response, just that trembling, that smile. I reached out, and that's when I saw the shard of glass in her hand. Her fingers were already bleeding. Blood pooled beneath her body, soaking into the carpet. When I got close, she struck, quick as a snake. The glass sliced my forearm. I fell backward, hitting the doorframe. Chris came running in and froze when he saw her. Lynn's smile vanished. Her expression twisted, not sad, not scared, just furious. She didn't look at me anymore. She looked at Chris, like a predator eyeing new prey. "Run," I whispered. Now, we both bolted. I don't know how she moved so fast, but she was already at the bedroom door when I turned back. Crawling on all fours, that same wild motion, her bloody fingers gripped the doorframe like claws. We didn't wait to see what she'd do next. We ran to the car, called the police from the front yard. I could still hear her laughing, that dry, broken giggle that didn't sound human. At the hospital, they stitched my arm and my back. 11 stitches total. The police searched the house, but she was gone. Vanished. They didn't find the eyes. They didn't find the blood. Just one thing left behind. A blurry security cam image, pulled from our backyard motion detector, showing Lynn's face at the window. And a message she sent me an hour later from an unknown number. "I found you." The attachment was a photo. Dark, grainy, close up, her eye. Just one, looking through glass, looking at me. And the worst part? She was smiling. That brings us to the final part of this story. What Lynn became, and what I fear she still is. Because some things don't stop at the doorstep. Some things wait, and they learn how to follow. I left the state that same night. No warning, no bags, just my stitched up arm, a half-charged phone, and a rental car headed west. I didn't even tell Chris. I just needed distance, space, somewhere I could breathe without checking the windows every 5 seconds. For the first few days, I slept in cheap motels. Never the same one twice. Never near a forest. I kept the lights on, the curtains shut, and a knife under my pillow. Not that I believed it would help if she came. I wasn't sure what Lynn even was anymore. I only knew she wasn't my wife. Not anymore. A week later, in a dusty roadside inn in New Mexico, I got another message. Different number. No text. Just a photo. It was taken from outside a window. You could see the outline of a motel curtain. My curtain, and in the reflection, her face. Half lit, still smiling, still watching. I checked the window instantly. No one there. But I found something smeared on the glass. A handprint. Long fingers. Too long. I sent the image to the police. They traced the number to a prepaid burner phone purchased in Colorado under a fake name. No prints on the phone. No facial recognition match. It was like she didn't exist in their system anymore. And then came the voicemail. 30 seconds long. Static. Then breathing. And finally, that same voice I'd known for years, only thinner. Scratchier. Like it had to drag itself up from somewhere deep. "Why'd you leave the closet door open?" Click. I started noticing patterns. The handprints on windows always came in threes. The messages always arrived at 3:14 a.m. Same time I caught her standing in the hallway weeks before. It was like she was leaving breadcrumbs, or rules. A ritual. A cycle. And it wasn't just me anymore. A woman staying 2 rooms over was found locked in her own bathroom. Sobbing. Unable to explain how she got there or why there were bloody fingerprints all over the mirror. She kept repeating one thing to the cops. Her mouth didn't move, but she smiled anyway. That's when I realized I couldn't run. Not from her. She didn't need to chase me. She could find me, wherever I was. Eventually, I gave up trying to sleep. I started reading, researching. I found threads, obscure forums, dead subreddits, old blog posts, describing the same thing. A presence that enters through habit. Through patterns. Through trust. They called it different things. The watcher. The third guest. The wife without eyes. But the behavior was always the same. Peeking. Smiling. Waiting. And the trigger? Letting her in once. Whether you noticed or not. Maybe it started the first time I ignored her face behind the hallway corner. Maybe it started the first time I laughed it off. But by the time I really saw her crawling under the bed, she'd already claimed me. Now, no matter where I go, I find traces, broken mirrors, scratched floors, a lingering scent of rot in hotel rooms I've never stayed in before. The police? They've stopped taking my calls. Family? They think I had a breakdown. Maybe I did, but breakdowns don't smile back when you close the bathroom mirror. I tried to end it once. I booked a ferry, tossed my phone into the ocean, even changed my name on paper. But the first night on that boat, someone knocked on my cabin door. When I opened it, nothing. But carved into the wood? I found you. Same handwriting as the wedding card she gave me. Now I don't wait anymore. I know she's always near. I speak in whispers. I tape every mirror. I bolt every closet. I sleep with the lights on. I check every window before I close my eyes. And still, some nights, I wake up and hear something breathing under the bed. I don't look anymore, because if I do, I know she'll be smiling. If you made it this far, thank you. Not just for watching, but for listening. And if you've ever seen something you weren't supposed to see, don't ignore it. Don't pretend it's a dream, because that's exactly what they want. And once they find you, they never stop smiling.